I'm going to be discussing mindfulness strategies across the MTSS triangle. So as we know, MTSS encompasses all three parts that come together that give us a complete picture of that whole child. So we have our academic MTSS, our behavior MTSS, or PBIS as we like to call it, and then our social emotional learning. While today, mindfulness, you might think that's really focusing on that social emotional learning, and that's really true, and that aligns with it and complements maybe your pre-existing social emotional learning curriculum. We hope that you can see how this would be beneficial in all three parts of an MTSS framework. And at the end of this, we're going to provide examples and give you some ideas of how you could utilize this in each of those areas. When we're taking a look at how this can be implemented and what that looks like across all three tiers, it's much like any other part of that MTSS triangle. So looking at that universal tier 1, right, we got our daily, whole class, everybody, all students, all staff are participating in that mindfulness practice. And we'll talk about how that can be done maybe school-wide with everybody or classroom-wide as well. At that tier 2 targeted, those mindfulness practices are typically smaller group, maybe for those students who still having issues with some areas of behavioral concerns, right? These are typically led by those guidance counselors, specialists. And then we also have our tier 3 targeted intensive mindfulness practices. These are things that can be added into IEPs, 504s, and again, we'll provide examples of what that could exclusively look like. So mindfulness itself has become quite the buzzword these days. I feel like it's thrown around and maybe doesn't have a true depiction of what it actually is. I think people think that we're just sitting there with our legs crossed, right, meditating for hours in silence. And if any of you have children, you're all working in education, you know that is not, we can't do that, right? That's not something that's not feasible. While meditation could be a part of mindfulness, really the definition here when we're looking at it, this comes from Jon Kabat-Zinn from Living More Fully. The definition is paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally. So just to really kind of sum that up, it's just paying careful attention to your body, your thoughts, and really what's going on around you. So it really essentially gives kids those techniques for calming themselves down when their emotions kind of feel out of control, helps to quiet their mind and focus on something else rather than what's bothering them, maybe deal with stress appropriately, right? And it's really, really beneficial, not only for students that we're doing these practices with, but also adults as well. So your teachers have a benefit for it as well. So what does that look like in education? Well, in the education world, this looks like lessons and guided practices on these specific techniques to calm that body and calm that mind. In that and doing that, they become more self-aware, hopefully take a better care of their bodies and just manage their emotions overall. And again, like I said, while meditation is, a part of this possibility, there's a variety of different techniques, breathing, activities, strategies, all of these things. And again, it helps those students get a grip really on their feelings, what they're thinking about. And it's really beneficial too for transition, which a lot of our students have trouble with, or shifting their focus from one idea or like math or, and then going to reading or going to recess, leaving recess and then going into an academic. When we do this, when we're focusing on this, it can really help things like, preventing meltdowns, right? Stopping fights. Basically, again, the goal is to get that student to focus their mind on something else. And I just want to note too as well that this is not just something that can be done at the elementary level, right? This can be done at a secondary level. And it's something that I have personally incorporated in my own personal life, especially, to help me get to sleep at night and all of those things. With that being said, now I'm going to discuss the benefits of mindfulness. Okay, so as you can see, this slide really depicts mindfulness and its effects on well-being. So it helps to boost mood, focus, increase that energy, improve awareness overall, improve sleep, right, which we all need, relieves anxiety and stress, improves self-esteem, increases empathy, reduces depression, and improves well-being overall. And I think, like I said, I think we could all look at these things and think like, yeah, I could benefit from that. And I can certainly think of some students who would benefit from this as well. So in the classroom specifically, again, it enhances and complements our SEL programs, our PBIS programs. It improves brain breaks, right? Improved classroom climate and just school climate overall. Helps with co-regulation, facilitated self-regulation, all things, again, that we hope for our students. We want our classrooms to be calm, and sometimes that doesn't happen because our students really have a lot of outside things going on, and we have the pressures that we do and we put on them for our classroom and our expectations as far as academics and behavior. That's when we're seeing a lot of behaviors occur. So if we can take time to really stop and have students focus on the present moment and kind of stop worrying about their anxieties, it's going to increase and improve our academic scores and also behaviors as well. So looking at this, taking a look at each part of this in the triangle, starting with those tier 1 supports. So mindfulness is probably something, honestly, that some of your teachers are already doing. Maybe they're not even realize they're doing it. They don't even know that some of the videos they're showing are really helping to aid their students in promoting appropriate mindfulness, okay? But knowing its benefits and knowing how can it affect somebody's well-being, we hope it's something that you consider adding into your existing framework, whether that be through PBIS or maybe even, again, kind of tying that to your SEL program. When we're doing this, we're hoping to have a bigger positive effect on more students, right? Not just from that one teacher who's doing it in their classroom. So again, with tier 1, with any part of the MTSS triangle, it's beneficial for all students and staff, and all students and staff are doing it. So when we're thinking about doing this, we want to schedule a time that works for you. Maybe it's the beginning of the day, maybe it's at the end of the day. Or if you're a classroom teacher here, maybe you're considering your classroom schedule in a specific time where maybe you're seeing a big area of concern of behaviors, whether that be right after lunch or right after recess, or maybe at the end of the day when they're packing up their things to get ready to go home. For the biggest and most effect, we want to treat it as that non-negotiable daily activity. I think we like harness all the time. We hone in on the fact that PBIS really is about that repetition, that, ability to see things coming, the predictability for these students. So if it's something that they're working on every single day, we're going to have better effects. And you might get some gripe from some teachers and say like, well, here's another thing I have to add to my schedule. There's nowhere to fit it. How am I going to do this? I'm taking away from my academics. And I think I would argue in that moment that, 5 minutes of dedicated mindfulness to help calm a student might prevent 20 minutes of you having to interrupt the class and tell the students to quiet down, or from an epic meltdown from occurring. Okay, so when we're doing this, it's important to remember that we want to start slow with our students. They might find it kind of funny at first or be a little silly with it, but we want to make sure that we're teaching, reviewing those expectations. We as adults are modeling that mindfulness throughout the day as well to kind of make sure that every single person is doing it. It's just something that we all do. So thinking about it, and if we were considering doing this at a school-wide level, you might incorporate this into your announcements. So have a little daily breathing exercise. Again, if it's on the announcements, you have that teacher who's kind of negating it or saying like, that won't work. Well, if it's on the announcements, it's kind of forcing them to do it. So whether that's a daily breathing exercise, daily movement stretch, morning and the afternoon, or just maybe some positive affirmations, because the likelihood that you've got students who are hearing a lot of negative things at home and coming to school with that kind of depleted bank account, as we call it, emotional bank account, this really helps to build that up when they hear those positive affirmations and they're practicing it daily. You might also consider dedicating wellness spaces within your building for your students and faculty. Neshannock Junior High has done a wonderful job at this. Alicia Measel, who's a principal there, they actually have 2 dedicated spaces for their staff and also 1 for their students, where they can just go and kind of regain their composure and really just get calmed down for a second. And I know she'd be happy to share any information that she's gathered kind of along the way to help develop those. You may even want to consider altering your school-wide expectations or matrix. And, I don't want you to say like, oh my gosh, we got to throw away our expectations or start over. That's not the point. But taking a look at your existing expectations and maybe trying to find one that elicits like the ability to throw in some mindfulness techniques in your expectations or your matrix might help, just as it is depicted here on the right with this school who had pride as their expectations. But again, maybe it's just adding a little thing in your, your matrix that, can remind students that if I'm feeling a certain way, I can do this at that point. Okay. In a classroom setting, the way that we structure our classroom, right, can really aid in creating better mindfulness opportunities and really communicate that calm. And I'm sure, again, a lot of your teachers are already doing this and not realizing that they are really contributing to mindfulness, but having that low, soft lighting, incorporating sounds. Music is a great way to bring mindfulness into the classroom, whether that's through calming music like white noise or just having some like lo-fi music on in the background. Calming spaces is a topic for another day. We love calming spaces and adding those, incorporating those into our classrooms. And again, giving that chance for that student who has become escalated to really calm down and, not being seen as a timeout or I'm in trouble, but like having the thought process to say, I am at a point where I am overwhelmed, I need to go calm down is a big skill to have. And the last thing to consider is seating. So having those flexible options for students. These poor kiddos are sitting in a desk all day long, right? And, not really, giving up the fact that they don't have to sit in a seat all day. It can be an area or a location as long as they're still working. So the next few slides that I'll go over are some more detailed, more specific ideas of mindfulness that you might want to provide your teachers with. I won't be going into one each in depth just because of time's sake, but again, on our SMORE and our Padlet, I'm going to have all of these linked and additional ideas as well. And I want to say too, before I get to them, I want to make sure that you guys, know that this is not something that is just for tier 1. This can be done across, all of the tiers as well. So the first one being mindful somatic movement. So somatic refers to mind and body with that focus on how the body feels for that person experiencing. This might look like yoga, Tai Chi, mindful walking, body scans, all of those things. And again, these videos here, they are linked for you to go ahead and click. And again, those will be in the Padlet. Mindful listening is another great way to incorporate and calm students down, orient them to the next task. This slide here shows examples. You could use a chime or bells, again, that calming music, and even a little exercise here. So the first minute, those students are listening to sounds outside of the school. The second minute, they are listening to sounds inside of the school. And then that third minute, they're listening to sounds within the classroom. And again, it's just taking that time to really focus on something else rather than the thoughts that are going through their mind, racing through their mind, all of those anxieties they may have. Breath work, that practice involves focusing the breath, being present in that current moment, again, to reduce those anxieties. We have example videos and also another exercise called label breathing, where that student, instead of saying, take 5 deep breaths, like we do all of the time when our students are experiencing stress, they have to count out each breath, maybe repeating a number or repeating an animal or something while they're breathing in and out for that given amount of time. When they do that, that facilitates that calm breathing pattern by keeping their mind on that labeling in lieu of those uncomfortable feelings. The last example is guided meditation. And again, this isn't just sitting here with your legs crossed and you're sitting in silence for 5 hours. These give those audible steps to help those students relax. They include visualization to really help that student imagine themselves in a peaceful place. These ones are really good, especially if you're trying to bring that energy down, like we said, after lunch or recess. And they can even be used in academic subject areas. Maybe you're using it to retell a story or set the scene, close your eyes, imagine yourself at a beach or whatnot. Really getting the students to kind of feel where they are before setting the scene before they get to that lesson. Next, I'm going to explore how we can utilize this at the advanced tiers. So when we're looking at our students that we're choosing or identifying for our advanced tier strategies, we have multiple sources of data that we're taking a look at that are represented in this little guy here. Bus referrals, Swiss, break cards, bathroom breaks, nurse reports, report cards, attendance, all of those things we take into consideration when we are moving a student into our advanced tier system. So when we're thinking about all of those, right, we can kind of use a general guideline for deciding if a student needs a mindfulness intervention. This is something that can be done standalone, or it can be incorporated and kind of with another intervention in your tier 2 or tier 3. That's really, we can't tell you what to do, but that might be a decision that you make on a school level of how you would like to incorporate that. But this general guide can give you a picture of how you could do that. So much like we would for any other tier 2 intervention, we would look at those multiple data points at the top there and make a decision as a team what type of support is needed, whether that's internalizing, externalizing, or academic. So once we determine that, we can pick an appropriate mindfulness-based intervention. And then we always want to incorporate these 3 things at the bottom here when we're talking about that mindfulness-based intervention. So positive affirmations, an activity, and also a follow-up activity. This is something that you guys can determine again as a school how long you would like that to continue for, or whether it's embedded into another intervention. So on the next slides, I'm going to provide examples of each of those just for you to see a brief kind of way of looking at these at both the internalizing, externalizing, and academic. So we got a kiddo here who has these excessive nurse visits, excessive guidance counselor visits, poor report card grades, and some red flags on a universal screener. So we as a team have decided through our measure, whatever measure we use, that this student needs an internalizing behavior support in the area of stress reduction, okay? This student is going to these places because he's overwhelmed or stressed. So as you can see, some example positive affirmations: I am brave, I am strong, it's okay to have big feelings. We've got a mindfulness-based activity associated with that, and then a follow-up activity. And if you ever are looking for a fun affirmation song, this video over here will take you to Doggyland, who is run by Snoop Dogg himself, and he gives a lot of fun videos and catchy tunes for things, especially like the affirmation song that we have linked here. So that student would be performing these for a certain amount of time or with another intervention just to kind of build and reduce that stress. Another one is the externalizing. For externalizing, again, this student maybe has poor report card grades, that universal screener, a lot of ODRs, and we're getting teacher and family input telling us that this student is having those outward behaviors. Maybe they're touching other students and, always like getting into those physical aggression fights. And we've determined that the student needs instruction on body awareness. You can see those affirmations down there. I am kind, I'm in focus, I am in control of my body and voice, some activities, and then a follow-up journal activity. The last one being an academic support. So we have a kid who has poor report card grades, observations, maybe our benchmark data and our IST referrals have told us that this student needs some academic support. They're receiving these poor grades because of low self-esteem. So we want to build up that self-esteem, get that kiddo in, and maybe it's a group too, right? Maybe it's a group, a lunch bunch group where we're implementing this, a group of kiddos who need that improved self-esteem. So we practice those self-affirmations, those positive affirmations, affirmations, complete a mindfulness-based activity, and then always have that follow-up activity to discuss how it made them feel and what they could learn from that. Now, moving lastly into those tier 3 supports. So tier 3 mindfulness strategies can be implemented into these following documents: FBAs, BIPs, IEPs, 504s, and maybe even improvement plans as well. So it's something that can be written into a daily plan, like, or our specially designed instruction, or maybe it's in the goals and modifications in our policy updates for our school improvement plans. So maybe generally we understand and recognize that our school as a whole is in need of more mindfulness time. This is something that you can do, and it holds the teachers and staff accountable for actually implementing it, right? When we have a need for it and we have it written somewhere, it's something that needs to be done. When we're taking a look at this, we can see how it can be done. So with our students who are in those attentive tier 3 strategies, our focus and really for those plans is on the preventative measures, right? We know that it's much easier to prevent a behavior from occurring than to deal with it after it has happened. So we can put some of these preventative strategies in a student's document: calm corner in the classroom, visuals such as individual breathing cards on their desk, movement cards, posters, flexible seating, sensory bins, and breaks as needed. This would help that student get to the point where they are coming down if they have become escalated at all, and get back to instruction in an appropriate time. We do know if you are considering implementing this into your current framework, there could be some challenges and questions that you might get if you are trying to roll this out, or maybe from other stakeholders as well, such as what if a student won't participate or is disruptive? Well, we would want to address that behavioral challenge like you would for any other lesson, okay? What do you have a minor? Do you have a major form? What would that look like? Make sure you're surveying students to see which mindfulness practices they like the best, and maybe it will help them to actually complete it. We want to make sure that we are explicitly teaching those behavioral expectations and reviewing those regularly, use proximity control. And another thing that you could do is give that disruptive student a task. Maybe they're pressing start on the computer, ringing the bell. And I think the biggest thing for a student who won't participate is give them time, give them space, be patient. If they see everybody doing it and it becomes part of our culture, it might kind of reel in that kiddo who's like, I'm not doing that. That's not for me, when everybody else around them is doing it. And what if a teacher or parents disagree? This is probably a big question too. And I think a lot of people, especially, that are set in their ways, they have this feeling like this picture depicted here. This is the barn where we keep our feelings. If a feeling comes to you, bring it out here and lock it up. Don't talk about it. We don't talk about our feelings, right? And that's not something that we want to model for our students. So share what it is, what it looks like, the benefits of it. Maybe it's on the family communication newsletter. Include families on the process and encourage participation at home. If they're doing it, if they're seeing the effects and the benefits of it, they're more likely to go along with it, as are teachers if they're doing that with their students as well and feeling the effects of it. Just to kind of wrap this up, if we are, in the blue, taking a look at all of the components of mindfulness: breath work, mindful looking, mindful drawing, movement, listening, kindness, body scans, meditation, and guided meditation. All of those things can be brought back to all pillars of that MTSS, right? If we look at behavior, all of those things can kind of be addressed all with those lines with behavior. And it really helps. I hope this picture, it's kind of like crazy, but I hope it depicts again that when we're doing this, we're not just focusing on the SEL part of the MTSS triangle, right? It is going to help in all areas of MTSS. We're going to see better behaviors. We're going to see better outcomes for our students in academics, and really overall, just better students when we have all of these in place, which leads to better teacher outcomes as well, right? If we are teachers and we have students who are listening, doing the right thing, getting good grades, all of those things, we're going to have better outcomes and feel better about everything. So with that, this is not something that we would ever require you to incorporate into your framework. And we hope that you consider it though. And maybe it's just adding one or two things into your already current framework that exists, just to bring everybody together and give those students an opportunity to practice those appropriate mindfulness techniques and really give them a chance to have that positive feeling from doing one of these. Okay.